Hello everyone. Oops, I forgot to delete the previous code before I started up again. Well, there we go. So anyway, hi. Welcome back. So this week we're going to go over loops and we're going to do some ands and ors. But in this video we're just going to do some loops, okay? Now there's two types of loops, for loops and while loops, that I'll go over in this video. And here's the end result of what it'll look like when we come up with this program. Now, obviously, you look at that and go, well, you know, I could, in theory, just see out this. You could make a h/n, e/n, l/n, but considering I'm looking at your code, I'm going to know if you're going to do that. You know, if you just give me the output, you're not getting any credit. So I want to see what your actual code is. And there are no inputs this time, so it'll just do that automatically. So a while loop, for loop, a while loop, and a for loop. We're just making 4 different loops today. So, let's go in and let's learn how to make these guys. So, as always, we're going to get rid of all that stuff in between main. And here's what we're going to do. So, obviously, welcome them to the program, guys. Let's be nice. Welcome to the loops program. And, you know what, while I'm at the bottom, let's just, even though I know it's not going to work, return 0. So, oh, and let's give them a couple of /n/n's there. Now then, I'm going to have an int. I'm going to have myself an example loop. Example loop. Whoops, remember? I'm going to name it example I. Example I equals 0. And I'm also going to have a string. Example S equals hello. And then I'm also going to have a thing that's an integer, and I'm going to call it counter. And for the sake of everything being capitalized, I'm going to make sure a counter is that. Counter equals 0, okay? So, there's all my variables I'm going to need for this program. 2 integers and a string. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves, the first we'll count from 1 to 5 in a while loop. So, first of all, let me explain what a loop is. Okay? A loop is something that will continue looping. It will keep going on and on and on and on until we tell it to stop. Okay? So there's multiple types of loops. There's a while loop, there's a for loop. Those are the 2 types of loops we're going to do today. So we're going to do a while loop first, okay? So while, you see how the word turned purple? That means it's a thing that we need to use. And I'll just say while, and in these parentheses, so much like an if statement, what's the condition I'm going to use? So while example I is less than 5. So while it is less than 5, we're going to do something. And what that thing is we're going to do, we're going to count. We're going to count, see out. We're going to see out example I. And then, of course, I'll see out, I'll see out myself a /n because I want some space there, or else it's just going to go along in one line and you're not going to see the individual steps. And, actually, I don't think we'll need we will need a counter, but not till later. So, if I execute this, this will cause an error. Because that was not the error I thought, but here we go. We will have an error. The error is that, well, 0 is less than 5. 0 is now also less than 5. It's still less than 5, it's less than 5, it's less than 5. It will always be less than 5. So, basically that loop went on forever, and it will never stop. However, eventually the program noticed that it was in an infinite loop and stopped itself. But in the old days of computers, that was a very good way to just ruin the memory of your computer. So, what we're going to do is, we're going to just go and say example, example I, because that's what I named it, plus plus. Now, what does that plus plus mean? That plus plus means that now example I equals example I plus 1. That's what that means. Okay? So, now it's going to be 0, then it's going to get to the bottom of that loop and go, okay, end of the loop, let's go back up. Now, example is 1. 1 is less than 5, print this, so on and so forth. Oh, now it's 2, end of the loop, let's go back up. So on and so forth. So what you will get is, now you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it ends before it gets to 5, because it was less than 5. If I were to do a less than equal to, it will do that last thing and it will get to the 5. But you'll notice, in my example, it did not do that. Because remember, what is the first spot of your thing? Slot 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have, in fact, counted from 1 to 5. The first slot, second slot, third slot, fourth slot, fifth slot. It's just that slot 1 is 0. Now, I guess I could be a smarty pants and change this from a 0 to a 1 up there, but I'm not going to do that. Okay? I'm not going to do that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say, once again, that example I equals 0 again. Because once we're all done this, it's 5. It equals up to 5, because that's where it stops. So I'm just going to reset it back to 0. Because remember, a code goes line 1, line 2, line 3, it goes down in order. So at this point, example I is 5. And now from this point onward, nope, it's back to 0. So I can go and do this again for the next loop. So just know that you can, in fact, declare something twice. But what you're doing is you're overriding what the previous result was. I'm just letting you know that. So be careful when doing that. If you really want to make an example I2 instead, just so you don't screw up, you can do that. Just know that this next loop is going to be, using example I2 then. So, this time let's use a for loop. So C out. Yeah, let's use a /n here. Now, let's do the same thing in a for loop. /n. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to use a for loop. And if an if statement starts with if and a while loop starts with while, well, then obviously a for loop starts with for. And then, has the same sort of brackets as each of them have. So, there's going to be a difference here. The difference is that all this math of the I++, our ending point, and all that and our starting point, all of that is all done in here. Okay? So, this thing where I put example loop right there, I actually don't need that line, because I'm going to describe it right inside these parentheses. So, example integer equals 0. Okay? And then I'm going to put a semicolon. And you know what? I'll just put some space in between that so that you can see it a bit. And then, example I is less than 5, semicolon. and then plus plus example I. So, what just happened? Well, there are three parts to a for loop. We have a starting point, we have the counter, and we, wrong part. We have an end, and we have our counter. Okay? So that right there, that counter that I had, the end point and the start point, which were all on three separate lines for a while loop, I can put all inside a for loop, and that will cut down on coding. So now all I need to do is just say cout, example I, and cout, because I like having the way it looks with the extra space there, /n, and it'll work. It'll do the exact same thing, but with much less code used. See? It looks exactly the same, but I get to declare my starting point, I get to declare my ending point, and I get to declare my counter all in the same thing. Whereas with a while loop, I get to declare my end point, but my counter I'll need to put inside somewhere else, and my starting point I need to declare somewhere else. So now that we did that, we're going to do the same thing. By the way, in case your code ever gets too messy, there's these little arrows. You can drop down and see them out like that. So, and the same thing with these little purple things. It'll expand, contract, expand, contract, expand, contract. That's a good way to know if you have something inside of a loop or inside an if statement or not. Now we're going to do the same thing. But, now let's use a word for for loops. So, cout. Whoops, I see that slash, it's going to cause an error. Now let's use a word in a while loop. And /n. And remember your semicolon, David. So, we'll do another while loop. Once again, it begins with while. And ding! Thank you for mentioning my phone right now. Busy. Gonna let that go. So, here we go. So, while loop. Now, this time, we're going to have ourselves a, so remember that counter we had right there? Yeah, there's the counter. We're going to make sure we use it this time. So, while, here's the thing, example S for example string, and now I'm going to put some square brackets around it. Okay? And that square brackets is the counter. Okay? So, what do those square brackets mean? Well, let me explain it. So basically, every single possible string, if you really think about it, is made up of characters. There's slot 0 is the H, slot 1 is the E, slot L is the 2, slot L is 3, slot O is 4. It's really multiple objects. And honestly, you can make anything multiple objects. Like, I could store multiple numbers inside example I if I really wanted to. It could have a 0, and then also have a 5, and also have a 10. It can also have a whatever in it. You can store multiple things. So what I've done is said, hey, I want specifically just that part of it. And we're going to go it step by step by step. Technically, this is known as an array when you have these square brackets. So for example, this string here has multiple words in its sentence. Okay? Individual letters for each word. Even if you have a big number like 300, there's 3 individual characters inside 300. There's a 3, a 0, and a 0. And so you can do that. You can break things down. So what I'm doing is I'm breaking things down. So just know that that's what those square brackets mean, okay? It's an array. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make myself actually a thing here. I'm going to make myself a new thing. I'm going to make a char, and I'm going to just name it letter. Letter makes sense, right? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and say letter is going to be equal to example S, because we're using the string version. And because what I'm doing right now is I'm doing some funky conversion. So basically, the letter, because the counter, if you notice, the counter is actually an integer. It's a number. So I'm looking at slot 0 of the word. But if I were to just go and print out that, I would be printing out the 0, then the 1, the 2, the 3, the whatever. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that letter and I'm saying, hey, the letter is going to be the specific slot, but it's looking for the character in that slot, not the number in that slot. Okay? So then I'm going to go cout letter, because obviously I'm going to print out the letter. And then I'll do cout, because I like using the space so that you see it, /n. So basically what I just did was I just used a number to convert it into a letter. So beforehand, where we were taking integers and making them strings, I just took a string, which was my example S. I specifically found the integers in it, the specific slots, and I used those integers and converted them back into a string, basically. I took it from a number to a letter again. So we just did the conversions in reverse this time. And if we execute this, you will see what it looks like. And of course, we got H. What did I forget to do, everyone? I forgot to add my counter. So, obviously, counter plus, because that's plus equals 1. Now then, you were expecting, I did a colon, not a semicolon. There we go. Execute. Now we got HELLO and it ended. There it goes. There's your while loop. Let's use a word in a while loop. Boop. So now, we're going to do the same thing, but obviously, this time, we're going to use the same in a for loop. And let me just add a /n here, /n, and I'll use a /n just to space things out because I know it's going to look like that. So, much like last time where I had to set the char and I had to set that and set the plus and set this, once again, the for loop is going to let me do all that stuff in there. So I can just have my counter be equal to 0. So even though counter was back up to whatever it was, I can just go and put it back to 0 in there. And then I can just say, example S, my end point is when it gets to the end of the counter, right? That's my end point, same as it was here, same as it was there. And then, of course, my plus counter. So, like last time where I forgot to add my counter, now I don't have to. And now, all of that, my start point, my end point, and my counter are all in one line again. So, once again, I just have to make the letter, because I have to make the letter be equal to the example S counter, and get that out of the way. And then I have, the cout, cout the letter, and then cout. I realize while I'm doing this, I probably could, since it's a string, I probably could have combined those /n's with the letter there, and it would have worked perfectly fine on these two. But even then, as you see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 3 lines of code in here instead of 4. I cut myself out a line, and of course, you know, still had to have done this either way, but I've saved myself a little bit of coding. Whatever one you feel is better or easier for you, but just know that there are 2 different types of loops, and it'll go the exact same way, like this. So once you get this, once you get it all working, and, you know, all that sort of fun stuff, get it working, save it, copy it to a Word document if you want, but save it, submit it through Moodle. Have a great day, because next we're going to go into, the next video is going to be and an or. So we're going to make ourselves a computer login program. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.